UFO Roundtable, the UFO thinker and pursuit of the paranormal podcasts.
Okay, so hello and welcome one and all to the monthly Roundup Roundtable, festive edition. As we record this, we're smack in the middle of Christmas and New Year, so a little bit more light-hearted today perhaps, and we have a few extra guests to join the fun. My name is Frank, UFO Thinker Podcast, and I'm joined as always by the two co-hosts of Pursuit of the Paranormal, Ash and Greg. How are we doing, chaps?
Hello, very good. Merry Christmas, everyone.
Happy Christmas.
Seasonal greetings to you both.
And you.
And this week we have the special privilege of being joined by a US Air Force brother, an individual with unlimited energy, one of the hosts and founder member of Calling All Beings, my guy DJ. How you doing, mate?
Yeah! To the newest member of Calling All Beings, Frank the UFO Thinker! Yes! Amen!
There's that unlimited energy that I was referring to. So, also making a return appearance, always welcome to the round table, the magical, musical Thunderbird, a.k.a. Charlotte. Ow! How are you doing?
Thank you very much. Amazing, mate. Ow! What an intro. Thank you. Merry Christmas, everybody.
There we go. That is a quite cool sound, that thing that you've got there. What is it? Party popper?
Yeah, party.
That's amazing.
There we go. Ash is getting properly into the festive spirit, as you can hear there, people. So this could get a little bit hectic with quite a few guests. We might have somebody else joining us in a little bit. We'll see how it all pans out. What I would say, if some of these topics that we talk about, if anybody's not had a chance to read up on one or whatever, that's not a problem. Some of these things have happened in the last week in some cases, and with all the holiday festivities in full swing, you may not have had a chance to get up to speed. So if that's the case, no worries, just add whatever you want and pass it right along. There's plenty of us here. And if anyone has got anything to add, feel free to use your little hands up button and I'll try and get to you next. And as is traditional, I'll do some wordy introductions for each talking point, and then we'll go around for everybody's thoughts. So, first of all, before we get into the actual topics, everyone had a good Christmas?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
All good.
Yeah, enjoying the festivities, relaxing for a few days.
Yeah, sure. I think I'm going to get to relax. I drove like 16 hours to 8 hours down, 8 hours back to South Florida with all 5 of my pets. Went to a Brazilian party with some of the jiu-jitsu homies, and then with my brother Christmas Day, and then drove back. So I'm going to relax. I'm just not sure when that's going to be.
Yeah. Do you know, I thought I heard some cats in the car with you when I was talking to you the other day. Is that what I was hearing? I wasn't hearing. Yeah. It wasn't my imagination. That's cool.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's hardcore.
Dogs, so.
Excellent. Sounds like
the smell
proper
alone.
road trip. Yeah,
man, there was no smell. I mean, they didn't use the litter box, any of that. And we did get to take the cat hiking with the dogs. The new one we adopted is really good at hiking, so she went and did that. We went on 2 hikes, but yeah, man, it just the driving is just not my thing.
With your leg.
Yeah. You been up to anything in particular, Charlotte?
I've been doing quite a lot of work before the Christmas period kicked in. But I've just been chilling, watching TV. I've got no kids, so we can eat dinner when we like. It's amazing. Been at Airsoft outside all day today in the freezing cold on the very top of the only hills around here. Yeah, I was like clicker, regen, respawn point. So I've just been stood out, people shouting my name all day. So I might have a little snooze.
Pretty cool way to spend the day there, I think. A bit of airsoft battle.
Yeah, it was amazing. Yeah, it's always funny at the end, you know. We had a Vulcan cannon in action today, so that was good.
Oh, wow, that's proper stuff then, isn't it?
Yeah.
Not just the, the small guns, the big stuff, eh?
We don't mess about, no.
How about yourself, Greg? You been up to much?
Well, I finished work on Friday afternoon and I'm back tomorrow, so I don't get too much time off. But no, been able to relax this. I haven't got young kids, so they get up whenever on Christmas Day. So not like a 6 o'clock start or 5 o'clock when I was little. And I've just been playing Xbox today, UFC on Xbox. So that's about it, really. And then podcasting with Ash last night. That was almost a shambles at one point. Oh, we got there. Our Christmas informality kicked in big time. Blue Wickeds and...
That's it. Have you got a Blue Wicked today, Ash?
I got a purple.
Oh, that's all right. Then I'll let you off.
Berry Blast is a bit more Christmassy, I think, this one.
I'm on Rioja, but not in a very good glass. So,
Man, I'm going to break out the whole wine bottle here.
yeah.
DJ's got a full bottle.
And I got to teach yoga. I have to teach yoga after this.
Oh, no. Woo! Down it.
I'm actually drinking a cup of Earl Grey tea because I had way too many whiskey cocktails yesterday. So I was going to be having a drink while we recorded this, but actually, based off what happened yesterday, decided to go for a cup of tea instead.
So proud of you, Frank, for all that whiskey drinking, man. So proud of you.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. I've never actually I really like Scotch whiskey, just single malt Scotch. But this year, I actually thought I'd push the boat out and actually try a whiskey cocktail, which is something I never really had before. I've always thought, whiskey cocktail? Oh, what are you doing? Just drink the proper, drink it neat, straight out of the bottle. But this year, I thought I'd investigate some cocktails, and pretty addictive, and they go down pretty easy. So ended up having a couple too many of those, I think. Anyway,
hey, Frank, can I just ask the rest of the panel? Talking about our brother Frank here, talk about an old soul. Is this man an old soul or what, man? I mean,
100%.
He was around like in the 1600s, man, for sure, dude.
He's done so much drumming. It's like drummed him kind of several decades ahead, perhaps. His body's knackered. He's drinking whiskey now.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Totally.
Maybe in a past life I was like drumming at like the sheer rock face of a coal mine or something like that. I do come from a long line of miners, so there could be something to that,
There you go.
We got to get Priscilla and Hollywood to look into this, man. Surely they can tell us something.
Frank the movie.
Anyway,
you mean Hollywood, not Hollywood?
Yeah, Hollywood. Yeah.
Right, I think we best get stuck into some UFOs there. We're getting carried away here. So,
what did you expect?
I did say it was going to be a little bit more lighthearted than usual, so it's all good. Awesome. But anyway, getting into the first topic for discussion then. So, there was a case investigated by Ben Hansen and reported on by Chris Sharp and Josh Boswell in the Daily Mail, which went on to be then reported in a lot of other media outlets as well. And it consisted of some very bright lights in a V formation moving very rapidly across the night sky. So there were two separate videos taken from different angles showing the same objects. And the story kind of blew up with tens of thousands of likes on the original post by Ben Hansen and on Twitter, that is. And as time went along, various skeptics and kind of debunkers started to get into their own investigations into it. Now then, I've been in the music industry for a little while, so I've seen a lot of festival stages and outdoor light displays which kind of use a motorized head that can create a very similar lighting effect. So obviously that did ring a few bells when I first saw the footage. Now, the ones that I've seen were mostly kind of pro lighting rigging companies and things, but these days they are quite widely available to the public for Christmas lights displays, etc. Now, Mick West, love him or hate him, in my opinion, did a pretty good job actually in coming up with an explanation for this case. Now, he plotted the angles of observation on a map and managed to locate a fairly fancy Christmas lights display right where the two lines of sight met. And then he reached out to the owner of the lights and confirmed that they have a similar pattern of lights as part of their display. Now, it would be good to double check that, I think, by trying to recreate the shot, but I have heard that might be a tad difficult, as you would have to kind of have the exact same cloud conditions and whatnot. But all in all, I personally think it's probably quite a good explanation, which has sort of been backed up by some of the more rational and trustworthy skeptics and investigators like Finn on Twitter and Chris Spitzer. and a lot of opinions have been flying around. So I thought it'd be interesting to discuss this a little bit. It kind of opens up a wider conversation a little bit about, hyping up stories and whether or not the initial investigation was thorough enough and all that kind of thing. In terms of like my thoughts, I personally don't think that there's much wrong with what Chris Sharp and Josh Boswell actually did in reporting the story. I think if you look at their track record, I think they've done a very good job of bringing the UAP topic into mainstream news here in the UK. I know Chris Sharp personally, and I don't think that he deliberately sort of hyped it up. In my opinion, he was reporting on a story that was brought to him by Ben Hansen, who's a former FBI agent, who said that he'd examined all different areas in his investigation. It was quite thorough. At the end of the day, perhaps something got missed. It's not exactly concluded yet. So as I say, I'd be interested to hear you guys' thoughts, but I think perhaps could be a couple of minor lessons learned here, but I don't think it's the end of the world. There could be some opinions about to fly. So, Charlotte, what are we saying? What do you think of the whole case, and what are your thoughts on it?
I can see both sides from the point of view of, you want to be a sort of, well, there isn't a problem reporting on a story, is there? That is Chris's job. But I think from our UFO community point of view, I suppose we get kind of fed up with like ones that potentially haven't gone through the rigors of checking perhaps before they go out in a story and turn out to be hoaxes later. We always have that problem, don't we? So I guess there's a little bit of that. I was thinking about the Las Vegas one, which I thought maybe light pillars and stuff. So I was just thinking about totally the wrong thing anyway. But I did see a little bit of the coverage and Mick West sort of talking about the fairy lights and stuff. So I wasn't able to sort of make a determination in my own mind about that one particularly. But I don't see a problem in reporting something. But, you've got to be careful with language, haven't you? You can say something weird has been seen, but yeah, I wasn't quite sure how far it went in the article, actually. So I defer to you and all your knowledge.
What are we saying, DJ? What do you reckon, mate?
So, mate, I've just watched it for the first time. I was unaware of this, and I've just seen it, and I have not read what Ben had to say about it. So, can you clue me into what his conclusion was, or at least his hypothesis?
Well, I think it was just a case of it's unknown. It wasn't exactly like he's saying this is a formation of, ships from Zeta Reticuli or anything really specific. It was just that this is an interesting case. It seems to be an anomalous object, and we've ruled out a lot of the prosaic explanations. I mean, I think in the actual, he did the article itself, which had a lot of the information in it about the case. That's like the Daily Mail article, but then it was also kind of picked up by, like, I would imagine hundreds of online blogs and things like that who did their own reporting on the story as well, and with varying degrees of accuracy, obviously depending on the outlet. But I think the initial article that sort of broke the story, I'm pretty sure it had possibly anomalous craft or something like that, possibly anomalous objects. It did have possibly in it, so it wasn't sort of saying definitively like these things are from Venus, you know what I mean, or anything like that. But as I say, there's been a lot of other things written about it. But as I say, the actual investigation that he did, the looked at a lot of prosaic explanations, but decided that couldn't be the case. And then obviously, as I say, various debunkers, skeptics, and whatnot have kind of looked into it a bit further since the story originally broke, and determined that it could be, it's a very strong likelihood that this particular Christmas display, hilariously, it's a house, the Flanders family, I believe. As in, every time I read it, I can't get Ned Flanders from The Simpsons out of my head. But apparently that's what it was. No offense to the Flanders family, I'm sure you've got a fantastic Christmas display. So hopefully, that makes a bit more sense as to how it unfolded.
Well, what I can tell you from just looking at it, I can't make anything of that. I would have to have some corroborating data. And I'm going to give you this. And then if you want to address this later in the show, we can. Recently, somebody on UFO Twitter, whom we all know, asked me to analyze an investigation that she was doing. And she gave me lots of data. She showed me first the photos of these lights, then a thermal image of these of what appeared to be a source of heat. And then she shared with me the video and then gave me some measurements of the size of the total formation of them, which were very, very large. Like it was about 656 feet long, and I want to say about 275 feet wide if you took the 5 of them together, although they were sort of a disjointed grouping. So that I was able to offer some analysis, and I could not determine what they were. And I'll talk about that later. With this, so I'll talk about that later if you want to talk about it. But this in specifically, I don't see anything here that I could look at and say, "Oh, Lord,
Yay!
how are the Arabian stallions?" Never mind. But anyway, there's nothing really that I can get from that, Frank, based on what the video showed. Frank, you're on mute.
There we go. First time for everything. I'm distracted by
Yeah, it's
the
not
grand
just me.
entrance of Dave Smethurst. I was just about to say, for anyone who wondered what the just random celebration in the middle of DJ's speech, it was indeed the entrance of Dave Smethurst, the one and only.
Oh dear, very bad.
There he is.
Lord Smethurst.
Good to
Well,
see you all. Yes. What
Hello.
have I missed?
Hiya, Dave.
Yeah,
Good to see you, Charlotte.
we're just chatting there, Dave, about the Ben Hansen case of the V formation of objects and whatnot. And I've just added my 2 pennies, and Charlotte and DJ have just been discussing what they think of it as well. I think for what you were saying, DJ, I think it's kind of like radar is quite a big deal with something like that, isn't it? And if you manage to get some reports of these things being on radar, then it would be a bit of a different story. It's like, clearly they're not lights. If it's been, appearing, a V formation of anomalous objects appears on a nearby radar station, it's probably not going to be Christmas lights, is it, sort of thing? But there wasn't anything that picked up any radar returns in the area. So, yeah, make of that what you will, I suppose. But,
I'm sure Ash loved it there. I'm sure he was his favourite sighting of the, I know how he loves such things.
Well, that's exactly what I was thinking. Well, let's go to Ash, see what he reckons.
So, what I don't understand is how this has just got so much momentum behind it.
Exactly.
There's dozens each year, probably just in the UK, of exactly the same thing where it's spotlights in the sky. They all follow the same similar patterns. They all look exactly the same. It can look weird, but say it literally takes 5 minutes to realise, this is a light coming from the ground, not the other way around. So for a story like this to just gain so much momentum, like I say, I'm just like, why? I have posted on Twitter a little bit, just like, I just don't understand why it's just got so much, gone so viral when it is. You can literally go on any sort of database, MUFON, UFO, whatever, and there'd be tons of these exact same sightings, but none of them are getting the sort of legs that this one has. What Mick West has done is good, but he doesn't need to do all that. It's good that he has, because you can sort of say a bit more behind it, say, this is what it was, but you don't need to do that and just say, it's searchlights. Google searchlights, zoom in the sky, it show you the exact same thing. So, that's I've looked at it, watched the video, I was like, no, I'm done. That's it. I'm not even getting involved in this one. It's spotlights.
Yeah, well, like we've said in the past, Ash, obviously, with the database that you guys have with UFO Identified, you have seen a lot more than most. So those kind of things, I suppose, to you, must be, you can quickly identify something that you've seen a lot of times before as a misidentification. So,
like I say, this surprised me just sort of some of the names that are sort of giving support behind it. I was like, I'm just a little bit surprised. I wouldn't have expected it. It may not be spotlights. It may be something unusual, but to me, it's spotlights. I was surprised to see some of the names behind it that are giving it support. When I'm just like, come on, it's spotlights. I know we've been waiting for something to happen for a while, but it is just spotlights. So,
what are we saying, Dave?
Well, I think the lesson of it is, I don't know whether these UFO sightings lend themselves to quick turnaround media coverage. I think that's the lesson of it, to be honest with you. I think they probably dived in a little too quick. It's always a dilemma, isn't it? you want to work with the mainstream media, but they want a quick turnover, and you're not sure if they're going to sort of push it too quickly. And for me, you need to do your due diligence on it. I mean, if Mick West can whip something up in an hour, then you would expect that the people who are giving the story to people will be able to do more due diligence than that. And I think that's the lesson of UFO sightings. They don't lend themselves to quick turnarounds. And it's okay with hindsight, and we do want to see investigative journalism. We don't want it stifled, but you're only as good as the person on the ground doing the source work. And there are some issues about what lights were what and what lights were who, and did those lights from that Flanders place make the same shapes? But I saw 3 of the films, and I thought, oh, they look, you know, because I don't know anything about lighting, I thought, oh, that looks like a spotlight. The 2 where they were spiraling looked a bit more interesting. But then I remember you saying to me, Frank, about lighting rigs you'd seen at a lot of gigs. I don't know if you mentioned that already. But, I don't know what they all look like. So, but again, the crucial thing for me was, with a bit of checking perhaps, then it would have been, a lot less grief. So I think one has to take multiple sources, and I just don't think they're good for quick turnarounds. I mean, I don't want to put people off from doing it, but I just think it's a bit unfortunate, really. I know Chris is looking at doing a piece on the Liberation Times, just looking at doing a much fuller piece on it, looking at all the different angles, really. And I think it'll probably be lesson learned for a few. Well, maybe not for the tabloids, but for people who are covering this, really. So I think it is what it is. I don't want to put people off, but I do. It does seem to me. I mean, I don't know, but it does seem to me the lights. They didn't seem very substantial, did they? It didn't even like orbs or anything. But I, as I say, 2 I thought were good, 3 not so good. And I did think of those guys down in where was it, Wisconsin, with the big trailers, with a spotlight on the back. You could easily do that, couldn't you, if you were running around? Yeah, but
yeah, I think, like you say, most of it. I mean, like I said, when I saw it, I just instantly thought of those outdoor festival stage lights, and I've seen so many of those. Like the lights that you can get these days are absolutely amazing. The sorts of things that would have only been for professional lighting rig people, 10 years ago, or whatever. People can just have that in the back garden now. So there's going to be a lot of these, and I'm sure Ash gets sent these types of things all the time. The one that did stand out to me as looking a little bit more interesting was that one where there's the V formation and one of the objects seems to come behind, or objects, inverted commas, comes from behind and kind of joins the formation. But then again, like I say, there's some pretty amazing lights that you can get that maybe can do that kind of thing and do randomized patterns and whatnot. So it could very well have been that. And as soon as I saw the plotting on the map thing, the 2 lines of sight point to the Flanders house or the Flanders display, sort of convinced me that was the most likely explanation at this point. But Charlotte, what you thinking? You got something to add?
All I was going to add really is that I mean, things can look really weird, and especially with like the cold weathers that have been happening in the States at the moment. I think you could get some really weird effects just kind of in the atmosphere, and ice crystals, stuff like that can happen. But yeah, I'm near Cleethorpes, which, as you probably know, is a seaside town, and you get the fair there. You do get spotlights sometimes, and it's freaked me out at first. They can really sweep around, and I wonder if if you had one that was rotating, it's going to fall on a point, and it could look like it was swapping positions and stuff a little bit. But yeah, it's difficult because if you post these things up when you see them, you're not necessarily going to know what the light is, and you want to put it out there so people can tell you what it is. But on the other hand, we can get frustrated because we wish people would kind of share more data, maybe check out flight radar and those sort of things a bit more and think about things. And I actually said to Mick West in his thread about this, I suggest we try and work on making a sort of compendium video just to help each other look at what do different lights look like, what do things look like, what do satellites look like, flares, yada, yada. So we can all see, a bit like I think Dave Falch did with FLIR, didn't he? And, just be nice to see in a video, like how different things can appear in different weather conditions and educate ourselves a bit. And every time someone puts a video, we can go, boom, here's this video, check it out. I'm not saying, everything's got an explanation, but there's a lot of things that I think we could save our time on by not looking at, because it's probably just something quite down to earth.
Yeah, very much. I think something like that would be really helpful, wouldn't it? A common misidentifications kind of guide or something. I have seen a couple of similar things. I know Scott Brown, another kind of, like a open-minded skeptic, shall we say, on Twitter. He's done a lot of that kind of thing. He's got some really useful graphics with various misidentifications on. But yeah, DJ, did you want to say something there, mate?
Well, bless her at Thunderbird for coming up with that. And that would require some positive sort of effort on Mick West's behalf, and hopefully he will do that, because that is a great idea, so that people can identify what they're seeing without reporting it something that's not anomalous. On the other hand, Frank, you pointed out the one interesting thing about that video, which I saw as well, but I was like, well, it's not even worth bringing up because it doesn't look real. But just that one that joined the formation was the only thing intriguing about it. And by the way, Charlotte, if somebody needs music out there, she's done the music for Cab, for my MotoGP podcast, and for my high school podcast. So what's up at Thunderbird? I don't know the digits.
I'm charging this year, but it'll be like £5 or something, or swaps.
Okay, I'll tell you what, I'll go 6. So, all right,
awesome.
Right, Greg, what we saying, mate?
So
leave the best till last.
Yeah, absolutely. So I saw this video the other day, and straight away I just thought searchlights. I live down the road from Oxford. So there's a main road, and on that main road, the A40, there is a Christmas tree place, and every year the same searchlights go up around, and you can see it over the town where I live in, and everybody goes, oh, what's those funny sort of lights in the sky? And everybody's like, it's the Christmas tree place down the A40. And everybody goes, oh, yeah. And then in the summer, I live down the road from Cornbury, and Cornbury Festival's on. Obviously not from now on, but there's always a post on like Spotted Whitney, where I live, saying, has anybody seen those strange lights in the sky? And then people go, do you think there might be a music festival on? And it's spinning and all that kind of stuff. So I saw it. And even that one where it comes in weird, I think they only have to move a little bit, the lights sort of like that on the ground. And where they're so high up hitting the cloud, it looks like they've travelled quite a long way. So I can't see it's anything other than that, personally. But we were talking about a few minutes ago about journalism and whatnot, and looking at Ben Hanson's pinned tweet that he's still got up there, that kindly enough, Elon Musk now puts tweet views on there as well. So he's had 2 million tweet views of this particular pinned video, which says, breaking now, multiple witnesses reporting orb-like UAPs in formation over rural Wisconsin, with exceptional videos captured at locations miles apart. Fire, police and airport authorities assisting as residents ask for help in identifying the source. To be honest with you, that couldn't be any more sensationalist than clickbait if it wanted to be, especially with the program that he does called Fact or Fiction, when he goes out there and tries to replicate stuff before saying it's this or this. And I swear they've done a lights one before on that program. So that just screams, I need somebody to click and interact. And unfortunately, social media now is all about that, good or bad. So you can put stuff up and it'll be clickbait for a couple of weeks. And whether it's good clickbait or bad clickbait, it's interactions with your post, and it's all helps algorithms. So it doesn't matter whether you put up shit news or good news, fake news or anything. As long as people are interacting with your post or viewing it, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to you. It doesn't matter, because the algorithm just then pushes your content higher and higher and more views. And that screams to me, sorry for ranting, this screams to me that this is all about clickbait, because somebody with that kind of knowledge, doing that kind of TV program, surely wouldn't put it up there first without trying to explain it, which is what his TV program is all about. And they try and replicate it before they say, oh yeah, it's unknown or it's lights or whatever.
Yeah.
Go
Yeah,
on,
so
Dave. Sorry about that.
The implication is that you should really take it down, shouldn't they, if they're not sure?
Absolutely right.
Yeah,
and it's a week
that's the
later.
point.
So over a week later, it's still up as a pin tweet, and it still says breaking news, and it's bullshit.
I mean, it's not a good look, that, is it? And they should, I mean, I suppose the moral is it's better late and right than early and wrong, isn't it? And that's what I was getting at earlier, really.
Exactly.
And on that story in the Mail, it did say probable, but there's no probable about that tweet, is there? And in a way, they're relying on him getting them the right information. And he's like, well, I don't know about let him down is maybe a bit strong, but maybe more due diligence would have been expected.
Absolutely.
I mean, everybody's adults, though. They have to take responsibility.
Yeah, absolutely. But the people look to people with that kind of credibility within media or whatever and go, well, if they're saying they can't agree what it is now and he's putting it up saying possible UAPs, there's got to be something to it. And that's what annoys me as a layperson and someone who's not the expert in this kind of field. But I can see it screams clickbait, and it's crap.
Yeah, as predicted, it's kind of inspired quite a lot of passionate opinion. This one, hasn't it? I've seen the same thing on Twitter, and intense. What are you saying, DJ?
Well, I would be a little bit careful about saying that because he was on a couple of weeks with us a couple of weeks ago, and he seemed to be very interested in taking up with his family and the holidays, and probably doesn't care a whole lot about that tweet. And ultimately, what goes on your Twitter feed or what comes out of your mouth, you're responsible for. So, but for me to say that he's interested in clickbait is to say that I know his intent and I don't. And I don't know what's on his mind right now. So I would be careful about making that assertion other than just saying he should take it down, which if it's been proven to be false, he probably should.
Or unpin it.
Well,
that's
I know,
what we
I'm
need
just
to
saying though, but when you say clickbait, now you're making an assertion that you know what his intent is with that tweet. And I would be cautious about that personally.
I understand that, but I just think somebody in that position putting that kind of content up knows what the reaction is going to be.
It makes
Simple
it
as
look that way.
But then again, whatever is on your show that comes out of your mouth or goes on your Twitter, either that you tweet or on your feed or your retweet, you're responsible for.
Absolutely.
Which is why I when somebody says, like, for example, what's that cat? Theories of Everything. I can't remember his name now. John Mungle.
Kurt.
And when he plays he puts up a tweet of somebody who said something that really upset a nearly 80-year-old woman in Linda Moulton Howe, and people say, "Oh, well, he didn't say." No, don't tell me he didn't say it. It happened on your show, or it came out of your mouth, or it appeared on your tweet. It's you, period. So Ben is responsible for this tweet. I would just be careful about characterizing what his intent is with it, unless you know.
It could be a case of, like you say, it's just been Christmas. And because of that same thing, I haven't actually seen whether or not Ben himself has actually done a follow-up article or an explanation to say, right, well, now we've had these extra things come into the equation. The situation's a bit different. Maybe he has, maybe he's not. It's a couple of days after Christmas as we record this, so perhaps there'll be more to come on that side of things. And
he's posted since that multiple times on the 21st of December. So
it just shows how easy you've got to protect your reputation as well, but regardless of this, just speaking generally.
Yeah.
Because I mean, he's come over very well on your show, DJ, and he's built up a good reputation, but it's easy, if you're not careful to knock it down, isn't it? Not that this has particularly, but could do, couldn't it? And you've got to be careful, and you are responsible. And like you say, I do agree, Greg, if it's up on there and it's a long time, then, he probably needs to have a think about that. And I think it's the pressure, though. I think
we all agree on that he should take it down.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, when you ascribe an intent to it, that means that you know more than you actually know.
That's right.
I agree.
And one of the things that he shared with us off camera is how many endeavors that he's involved in outside of what we know.
Yeah.
And I was
Yeah.
just aghast at how many things that
Yeah,
the guy's
but-
into.
But that's the thing, isn't it?
Mhm.
It's the thing. Sorry, DJ.
Go ahead, brother.
Excuse me. It's the pressure between the media thing to be first and to be quick and turn things over, and the check-in. And I think with some things that's okay because it's a story and narrative, but with pictures and stuff, with that due diligence sort of element built in, it maybe doesn't lend itself as easy to that, really. And there's probably a bit of a sort of grey area there, but we probably need to sort out, I think.
Mm.
And if you guys are seeing me defend his intent, just see there's Nathan is on my shoulder right here talking to me, and Nathan he's very, very careful about that. He's very charitable, and he's had quite an effect on me over the past couple of years.
Okay.
And I'm glad he has. Thankfully, I'm the better person for it.
If you see me nipping out your back window with your tape recorder in my hand, DJ, I was just going to give it to some poor people down the road.
Yeah, Nathan definitely top bloke. I think he's had that effect to a greater or lesser extent than all of us. Really, he's a very kind-hearted soul, isn't he? Did you want to add something there, Greg?
Yeah, just saying that in regards to sort of taking down stuff or rectifying stuff when you know it's not true or it comes to light that the story isn't quite what it was. We had a podcast episode where we interviewed somebody about a particular alien photograph that had been taken in Redgate, and I followed the director Patrick on Twitter, and it came to light that the photograph was faked, not by him, but he had put the work out. So it is very similar. And we actually had him back on to talk about that and the impact it had on him, the release of his documentary and everything. So when we find out stuff was fake, that's an example where we've got people on and it actually created more content for us to find behind the story, as it were, and how it come to be that this photograph was faked. So that was,
I mean, that was hilarious, to be honest with you, when you were telling it on your podcast. I'll be frank with you, because they both went on the show and said, "Oh yeah," and he found out his mate had fabricated it
and stitched him right up. And they live in a really small town together as well.
Yeah. That's no, dear. Anyway,
dear indeed. But like you say, I think everybody makes mistakes. We're all human at the end of the day. We all want really interesting footage and mainstream media coverage on this topic. But the point is, if something doesn't quite go to plan, other facts emerge, it has to be addressed. And it's about how to then sort of take that and make it a bit more, of a constructive thing to bear in mind for the future. I think Jeremy Corbell sometimes gets some stick for sort of hyping up stories and whatnot. But actually, I think in some cases, he's sat on cases for years and until he's got every single area of investigation covered before he brings a story out. And I think, I'd suggest that that's probably at least partly because he's under the watchful eye of George Knapp. And, perhaps just a little pinch of that approach could have probably been used here. I think the lights were only recorded actually in the first few days of December, if I remember rightly. And the story was then in print only a few weeks later. So, as Dave says, best to get the story out right rather than as quick as possible. And having said all that, though, I quite like the open source investigation that takes place on Twitter. It can be quite heated at times, but it's actually the important thing is that the truth comes out in the end, whatever the truth actually is. And the wealth of different viewpoints and areas of expertise on Twitter and people in the community are quite valuable if they're used the right way. And as I said earlier, I think perhaps, rational skeptics like Chris Spitzer and Finn, could be, maybe consulted as part of investigations to cover these kind of possibilities and make sure a case has been, made completely bulletproof before being made public. And, perhaps that's a way to sort of take a bit of a silver lining out of this whole thing, like it'll just make things more thorough, hopefully, going forward. And as everybody said there, if you build up a reputation as an investigator, you want to make sure you've got yourself covered as well, don't you? Because it only takes a few duffers for you to throw your reputation away. So, yeah, hopefully something constructive comes of it, eh? Anybody got anything to add on that then before we move on? All good? I think we covered it pretty thoroughly,
to say the least.
He sounds like
Squeezed every bit of juice out of that orange.
That's it. There's just a little bit of rind left on the orange now, so let's move on to the next. Let's move on to the next fruit. So, right. So the US legislation, which has been much discussed on my podcast and others, recently passed with the president actually signing the NDAA into law, and this paves the way for various things to happen in the coming years. So importantly, the scope of the UAP office itself has been expanded. It now reports directly to the leaders of the Defense Department and the intelligence community. ARROW is the new name, the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, and even the term UAP has been altered in the wording to mean unidentified anomalous phenomena, which covers all domains now rather than the previous aerial, which specifically focused on things in the air. And the office will be undertaking a review of all things UAP and the government's involvement in that dating back to 1945, including any intelligence community disinformation efforts. It will also be coming up with a science plan to better leverage the US's intelligence gathering capabilities to get to the bottom of where these things are coming from. And a particular area of interest for me is the requirement for a secure process, a secure system for anyone who has signed an official US government secrecy agreement related to UAP to be able to come forward and reveal that information to ARROW and to Congress, regardless of the level of classification, without fear of retribution or prosecution. And that particular provision is intended to get to the bottom of the long-standing allegations that the US government has recovered extraterrestrial technology and perhaps even extraterrestrial beings. Now, Christopher Mellon recently put out a Christmas Eve article, which I was quite chuffed to see, outlining all of this and providing some further commentary. Very importantly, in my opinion, the article contained a few pretty big, very firm statements on some key issues that Mellon has been extremely cautious on up until now. So, quoting from the article, quote, "This process began in 2019 when I brought the astrophysicist Dr. Eric Davies to Capitol Hill to meet with staff from the Senate Intelligence and Armed Services Committees. Dr. Davies, author of the famous Wilson-Davis memo, provided specific information lending credence to sensational reports that an official US government program is actively seeking to exploit recovered technology that was fashioned by some other species or perhaps advanced AI machines," unquote. So I think that's pretty big from Mellon, who chooses his words very carefully. And he seems to be clearly naming Davies as having written the notes there, which he's never done before. And also the article goes on to talk about how he's brought others to the Hill to provide information to Congress, and I'm paraphrasing, but how the media should report on all of this to prepare the public for the possible revelation that we're not alone in the universe. And obviously, Mellon is known for his measured delivery, and he also goes on to say that, quote, "I'm not claiming that the information provided to Congress or to ARROW proves that Earth has been visited by extraterrestrials," unquote. But the ARROW office has some serious leads to pursue, according to Mellon, and it is true that Congress could seek to keep the ARROW's office findings confidential, but it is doubtful that this information can be kept under wraps for very long if confirmed. So it's not all kind of sunshine and roses there. There's, a few things that perhaps might be worth watching out for. Obviously, Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, ARROW's leader, has got a lot on his plate for this coming year. The questions I have around this are, will there be wriggle-out attempts, like we've seen in the past, to sort of get around these requirements? Does the ARROW office actually have the resources to deliver all of this amazing sounding stuff that we all want? And how much of this will actually be revealed to the public? At the end of the day, only time will tell, but it's an interesting thing to ponder while you're eating your Christmas dinner. So what are you thinking, Dave? I know you've probably got a few thoughts on that.
Yeah,
What?
well,
You sure?
yeah. Well, mild-mannered Chris Mellon went into the phone box and come out as UAP man, didn't he? Very good, because he's absolutely mental. I mean, I couldn't believe it. I mean, this guy's been dead careful. Oh, no, we're not bothered, lads. Oh, poor Air Force, don't pick on them. The last couple of months, bit of a volte face. The minute the legislation's passed, he's right out of the traps. So he's been dead explicit. So I think he's been playing it right down, like the rest of them have been doing, till this legislation come out, and he's ripped the mask off, as it were, to mix my superheroes. And he said, right, we're going for it now, lads. Lou also made this submarine quote, like he was some sort of maniacal submarine commander surfacing in Hudson Bay or whatever. Avi said, oh, well, I've seen some stuff as well. So they've all seemed to have kicked off and said, right, you passed it now. Forget about all that. We're going for it. I mean, I think he says about the media here, but his target, the media, is a device by which he criticises the forces of sort of non-disclosure, which I've written as FOND here, which is quite a nice acronym, really, isn't it? FOND, Forces of Non-Disclosure. But anyway, so I think you can see, and I also think he thinks these new powers have given him a lot more license to speak out. Yeah. Now, you mentioned a load of stuff, the Wilson Days documents, historical crashes, he said alien presence near Earth, mind-bending tech. Very odd, not the language we hear from Chris, but UAP, man. That's the sort of thing he says. And I also think as well that he's also gone for the OUS. The dog's banging at the door there. He can obviously hear me going on. He obviously wants to get in. Or maybe it's these forces of non-disclosure.
It's your quips that we're giggling at, Dave.
Yeah, no. But anyway,
We're laughing with you.
So you've got OUSD. He's now said they're out of the loop. He said that explicitly, so he's gone for them. He's talked about non-disclosure tracking anymore. He said the will of Congress is to reveal this and quote Senator Gillibrand on that. Jesus. And then he said, he's not said what was, he's not, the media disinformation. He said he's going to be looking into that soon. SETI's a double standard, as Seth Shostak jokes on his whatever, on his reduced grant fund. And so really, it's just it's a big change now. The gloves are off. I think he's been playing it down. And I think Kirkpatrick's now has got no excuse. I mean, we saw that pathetic thing with Moultrie, whatever, the sort of attempt to head us all off at the pants. Maybe it was his last hurrah before he got pulled off with a big hook on the side of the thing, saying, no, rubbish, get him off. Because he was going, oh, nothing to see here. Oh, no, don't you worry about it. Oh, yeah. In fact, Ash, he could have had you up there. That would have been all right as well, wouldn't it? He would have been alongside it, yeah. Ash, in fact, he should have got Ash rather than... So what do you think about that, Sean? He went, oh, well, it's a bit anomalous. Well, Sean, it could have been whatever. Could have been a bit of a reflection. And then he shut him up again. So that was weird as well. And I think they come out with that because he knew they're getting out. So I thought, Mile Man of Chris Mellon, UAP man, gloves are off. It's all kicking off. There you go.
Well, yeah, it certainly is all kicking off. So, yeah,
Dave's amazing. I just want to say Dave's hilarious. He's just got me in tears, just the way he says things. Brilliant.
I don't know how to follow that.
It's like the Who trying to follow Hendrix. How do you do that?
Well, go on, Ash. Let's hear from you, mate. What do you reckon?
I'm actually glad sort of Dave said all that first because I've not actually read past the headlines. And the first thought going on to the NDAA is it just felt a bit like deja vu. We were here this time last year, or was it in January when they signed it last year or this year? With this new legislation, this new group being formed. It's like it's not just the same thing we had last year. We've seen some stuff happen, but not much. And then going into obviously Chris Mellon stuff, I literally had only read the headline a couple of days ago where he was confirming the Davies notice is real. Well, I was just thinking, why is Mellon confirming the Davies notice is real? Why is he confirming all this stuff? Why is it not Davies? Or why is he randomly now coming out and saying this? So that was my initial thoughts. But now Dave said all that. Just like, okay, maybe that makes a bit more sense. So I don't really have anything to add because I've not looked into it. But yeah, that was just from listening to Dave then, just completely changed my thought on it.
Yeah, I think the key thing with the legislation is that, like you say, you're right, and it's something to bear in mind, the fact that there was very strongly worded legislation went through last year. But I think the thing was that there was a lot of wriggle-out attempts to get out of the requirements in that previous legislation, which we've seen unfold this year, with the UAP office being sort of changed names every 2 minutes and, the questions as to whether they even had any resources and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And this legislation's kind of a real response to that. Like, okay, they've tried to wriggle out of it, so what can we do to absolutely tighten the vice on them so that we actually get what we want in terms of answers for Congress and stuff. Now, the flip side of that is it actually going to be enough, or are there going to be more wriggle outs? That's kind of what I was talking about earlier. We'll see, won't we? We don't know. I mean, at the end of the day, if these alleged programs do exist, the closer, like I can't remember, I think it was George Knapp said recently, the closer you get to them, the more they're going to actually do work to try and not let you get to whatever they've got there, So, yeah, there's always going to be things to keep an eye on, see how it unfolds as we go along. But it's going to be pretty interesting to see. In terms of the thing about the Wilson Davies notes, the thing I found interesting about that in particular was that I think Eric Davies is basically never himself going to be able to just confirm that outright because of things that he's promised to various people. And I think part of the actual condition for even having the meeting in the first place with Wilson was that he would never talk about it and he'd never reveal, and so on and so on. So I don't think we're likely to hear that from Eric Davies unless perhaps something changes or whatever it might be. But Mellon having a very close working relationship with Davies, it's quite a strong indication that it is actually the case that Davies wrote those notes. And recently heard the same thing from Gary Nolan as well, who's also worked with and has a lot of respect for Eric Davies. He basically confirmed it clearly as well. So I suppose it's not as though Davies himself has said it, but it's probably about as good as you're going to get without Davies himself saying it, sort of thing. Some of his closest kind of colleagues and things like that. So pretty interesting, but yeah, the full extent of it all is yet to be seen, I suppose, isn't it?
Well, Frankie said he couldn't discuss it last time, didn't he, Mellon?
Yeah.
Or a couple of more. Oh, I'm not talking about it. Oh, it's confidential. Oh, no. So
yeah,
he's changed his tune a bit there, hasn't he?
I think that's the big shock, isn't it, really, that he went from not just clammed up when anybody mentioned it to all of a sudden just literally writing an article saying, by the way, the author of these notes, Eric Davies, it's like the opposite thing. So, yeah, like you say, Dave, I think it's almost like a switch has been flipped, hasn't it? As soon as this legislation went through, he must have had the article queued up ready to go, I would imagine, because it's a fairly lengthy article. I reckon he's probably had that written, ready to drop the moment the president signed the NDAA, which is kind of interesting to think about in itself, isn't it, really, that it was all planned and stuff. But anyway, Greg, you look like you're raring to go there, mate.
No, so I just want to address something that I'd spoken about the whistleblowers on previous roundtables, where I said that it would appear that although whistleblowers could come forward and they wouldn't be prosecuted or they wouldn't be persecuted, there's ways that they can have their roles sort of held back, going for future career opportunities being held back, so it's not doesn't appear to be as a result of whistleblowing. Now, looking at this report, I kind of changed my mind on that. I think that these whistleblowers will get that kind of backing, certainly from Congress. And as Dave just said about Senator Gillibrand, to quote here, it says, in regard, I recently had the opportunity to ask Senator Gillibrand, a leading sponsor of the legislation, whether she would support revealing the existence of alien technology if the whistleblower process confirms those sensational allegations. Without missing a beat, she replied, of course, why not? So if the senators and government are kind of on board, it would suggest to me that the whistleblowers won't necessarily have limited career opportunities going forward. So I just wanted to say that particular piece from Chris there changed my opinion on what I think would happen to whistleblowers, which I'd raised before. So just wanted to say that.
Definitely, I think your points that you raised in the past though were really good points, but I think there's a lot of nuance to it, isn't there, as well? And it does depend on what stage in somebody's career they're actually at, and so on. And I mean, we don't know exactly the specifics of this secure system as well. It may be that they can actually come forward and provide information on record via the secure system in a way that is anonymous, and they don't have to necessarily go back to the department that they're working in. Everybody, by the way, just let you know, blowing the whistle sort of thing. They might be able to do it in a way that's much more subtle than that and whatnot. And I think the key thing with Mellon is that he's actually specifically worked with these whistleblowers or the potential whistleblowers to craft this language. so that he's worked with them to make sure they feel like they're covered adequately by these protections. So that's interesting to think about. But something you want to add there, Charlotte? Go ahead.
I was just going to add that, the whistleblower thing is one of the things that I've written down as interesting, and the fact that it includes contractors. I'd like to know what that really means and how it could be wriggled out of. And obviously, that's not saying they have to come forward, but I'd be interested to see how that kind of works in practice. I don't know much about that aspect of things. Immediately, my brain goes EG&G, but that's probably not even a contractor. I don't know. So yeah, interesting there. And I agree with Greg. I mean, you hope it sounds like it's beefing up their protections and stuff, but then part of you doesn't want to get hurt and believe it.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Definitely. It's going to remain to be seen, isn't it, with a lot of this and how it all unfolds. But very, very promising, and I think it's going to be one to keep an eye on. What do you reckon, DJ?
Well, from a 30,000 foot view, there's no way other than to look at this as an enormous success. And if we were to make a contrast and comparison, let's say of the homes that we live in compared to like the Kardashians. So like the UFO community would be like Kim Kardashian, and then the Bigfoot community would be me here in this place in Santa Rosa Beach that doesn't even have a pool or even a fence around the backyard.
Don't even have a pool.
So that's how huge this is. The Bigfoot community is as big as we are, probably has more first-person witnesses than we do, maybe, and certainly has as many conferences and symposiums as we do, only that they use Facebook and not Twitter, and they have no Christopher Mellon whatsoever. They have no Lou Elizondo whatsoever, whom without, we would not be sitting here having this very discussion today. So, gigantic success that we have this legislation. There's no other way to view it. If I were to... If I were to try to poke a hole in it under where it says protection of systems, programs, and activity, it says the Secretary shall ensure that the mechanism for authorized reporting established under paragraph 1 prevents the unauthorized public reporting or compromise of classified military and intelligence systems programs and related activity, including categories and levels of special access and compartmentalized access programs. The Secretary shall ensure that the mechanism for reporting established under paragraph 1 provides for the sharing and authorized disclosure to personnel and supporting analysts and scientists of the office, regardless of the classification of information contained in the disclosure or any non-disclosure agreement. And here's the cold water: unless the employees or contractors administering the mechanism under paragraph 3 conclude that the preponderance of information available regarding the disclosure indicates the observed object and associated events, activities likely to relate to a special access program or compartmentalized access program that as of the date of disclosure has been, it looks like, explicitly and clearly reported to the Congressional Defense Committees. So there is a little, there are some outs in there. I hate to be the one to point that out, but
Boo.
yeah, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but Frank knows, like, although I'm a lot of me and our show is sunshine and rainbows and friendship, when it comes to this, I sort of go from glass half full to glass half empty, and I'm sorry that that's the case, but
Well,
so I
DJ,
think,
let me fill your glass, mate, because apparently if they haven't been reported to Congress, which none of them have, because they've checked that, if the special access program or whatever else, then it's fair game. So there's been a lot of debate about that. It's fair game. I mean, I know you probably know a lot of this anyway, but so I think there ain't much wriggle room talking about what's that guy's name, Dean Johnson. He's been and he said there's been none that have been reported. So if they haven't been reported properly, so if they haven't if they haven't shown you, then they'll have to tell to sort of reverse that thing. And so they've covered that pretty carefully. So I reckon they're going to really struggle to to get around that, because a lot of people earlier on were thinking that all special access programs were exempt. I know you weren't, DJ, but a lot of people early on. So there's a lot of talk around it and a lot of clarification, but actually there's virtually none that will be exempt, unless they've been either a gang of 8 or somebody of the committees.
Dave, there's two things. There's what will be reported, and then there's what you will eventually know.
Oh yeah,
or not know. So there's two things. So under the first part of it, if you have a portfolio, I can tell you that my boss, as a GS14, if he had something in his portfolio and he read, and this legislation came down to him and he read it and said, okay, you will report, he would report if he was aware. Now, let's say you're a GS whatever, and there's a special access program underneath that's in your portfolio that you're not read into, then do you know what's in that program?
No,
do you know what? So, you're at a site, but then out at this other site that perhaps is out west, this or that is going on, and you don't have the full purview or scope of what, even though those individuals report to you, you may not know and may not be read in. So personally, I'm just telling you, I still think there's a way to obfuscate this information.
Yeah. Well,
and you can take that.
I tell you what, though, the 72 hours is interesting, because I think they put 72 hours. They have to report it in 72 hours, so they don't move it all out of the anger that it's in. So when they identify it, they can quickly go for it. So, I mean, that comes back to this Chris Mellon thing, because that's been the debate, hasn't it? Is it all going to be kept secret anyway? It's all right doing all this, but we'll never hear about it. I know that was your point, was slightly different.
That's the second part. Right.
But Chris Mellon was actually addressing, and this is what made it so remarkable. He was saying, well, no, we are going to, the Congress do want to, and he sort of said that they're going to go push for that, which he's never said before, but they're going to push for openness. Now, it's no guarantee.
Good.
But it's certainly a big change. Now, that doesn't negate any of your points, but it does. It's the first time we've heard that from any of these people.
There's one more thing I want to add to this, mate, and it's about the Wilson Davis thing. And this is, obviously John Greenwald has come out and been very, what's the word? He's been very dismissive of the veracity of the claims made about the discussion in the document. There's an hour-long debate with Joe Murgia that somebody had on their podcast. I don't know if that was on, I don't even think it was on Joe's. I think it was on another podcast.
Yeah, it was Project Unity.
Okay, thank you. But what I would like to say is for Christopher Mellon to stake his reputation and say, I brought Eric Davis before Congress. I brought Lou before Congress, among others. But the fact that he said Dr. Eric Davis and what he and what he knew, that means he's staking his considerable national reputation in Congress and in the executive branch and the Department of Defense on that Dr. Davis is the veracity of his testimony. That to me means he signed off on Dr. Eric Davis. That should mean a lot to everybody, because for me to say I believe Eric Davis, people are like, I don't care what DJ thinks. But if it's Christopher Mellon, that means a lot. Or if it's Chucklehead from UFO Twitter says, I don't believe Dr. Davis and that memo, man, it doesn't mean anything. But when someone like Christopher Mellon says that this is legit, that this guy's legit, as Lou has said, that should be, alarm bells should be going off that there's something very serious that happened, and that document is probably quite real.
Yeah, very much. I mean, I think it's just as time goes along, the more and more comes out about the Wilson Davis memo. I mean, I'm pretty convinced by this point. I think it's way up in the 90% probability that is a legit document that was written by Eric Davis, and it is, a record of a meeting that actually took place and what was discussed in it. And what was discussed in it is pretty mind-blowing stuff, in my opinion. Going back to the legislation thing, I've been sort of really digging into that particular bit, and I actually reached out to D. Dean Johnson, who's become UFO Twitter's resident legislation expert. And D. Dean. Yeah, there's been a couple of people that I've seen posting about how waived unacknowledged SAPs and things like that might be exempt, and that's how they'll wriggle out. I do definitely hear what you're saying, DJ. I think there's room in that wording for potential wriggle outs could occur, definitely. But in terms of what's being proposed in this legislation, the email that I got back from Dee and Johnson is about that specific thing. So I'll just read a little bit of it out. It says the protections, non-reprisal, etc., apply to everybody who utilizes the system. If somebody came in and said, I worked on this secret program that had a captured UFO, the cleared people running the secure system would then check the list to see if that project had ever been properly notified to the designated congressional committees, as is required by law. It wouldn't take long because there are no secret UFO programs ever reported to Congress. So at that point, if they find that the information checks out or is credible, the DoD must then report the discovered secret SAP to the appropriate congressional committees within 72 hours. So yeah, pretty interesting. And I think it doesn't actually mean that any SAPs would be exempt, as certain people have been discussing, but perhaps there is a bit of room for wriggling out in that particular bit of the legislation, potentially. I suppose it's, again, one of them, isn't it, where it all remains to be seen. But yeah, anybody, Charlotte, you want to add something there?
I was just going to quickly add that, maybe Chucklehead expects, when a Navy pilot reports something, that it falls upon their lap, as a publicly sort of accessible document. Obviously, there's many layers of reporting, and some of these are talking about things which have to be reported to Arrow, and they're not going to come, anywhere past that. Obviously, I guess a lot of things are going to be kept secret. I don't know why a lot of them, though, and this is probably me being really naive, why can't they just say, oh, yeah, right, that was a special access program, that was a black project, we can't talk about that? Can't they just do that, ever? I don't get it.
How do you mean, sorry? So like, you get, well, one of the things I was just saying was that we have to sort of think that all these things have got many layers, as many slip betwixt cup and lip, and these things are being reported into Arrow ultimately, not to us. They're not just we're not going to see them just because they've got reported to Arrow. A lot of them are going to be kept secret and stuff. But that said, I don't understand why Arrow can't just come out and talk to Congress and say sometimes this is a black project, that's it, or even to the public and say this is a black project, this is something we're working on, we can't talk any more about it, shut up. Yeah, and that would just satisfy people. Yeah. Go ahead, DJ.
I can answer that. Have you ever heard that phrase, I can neither confirm nor deny?
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, I guess.
That's the answer.
Yeah,
but it's not a good answer, but that's the answer.
No, it could be more transparent.
It's not going to happen, that, though, is it? Because that's the point. The whole thing is they're looking for all these. Either whistleblowers are going to testify. They've got a database. Is it on that or is it in something else? They're looking at people who are signed into NDAs. They've got multiple lines of finding these things out. And so the whole point of the thing is that they find the special access projects that have been not reported to Congress, and they out them at least to that committee. So that defence wouldn't cut it because they haven't told anybody, and therefore democratic accountability is out of the window and all the rest of it. So I think that's the I think it might satisfy the public, but it wouldn't necessarily satisfy this inquiry. But I know what you mean, because they're not even supposed to discuss them, and I think, as DJ was implying, it'd be very hard to find out about them. So it's going to be a real morass that they actually go through. And I think, Charlie, you might hear that perspective coming back from the military, what you've said as well. So
that would be refreshing, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I've not got the actual wording to hand as well, but when I was reading through the actual, the full wording of the legislation, I think some of it in there as well is meant to protect for an incident where a member of the military or something like that might be out on a training exercise and they actually do see a piece of black budget technology. Because obviously that exists as well. The US aren't going like, right, we're not going to invent anything else now, we're good. They're obviously always working on amazing new, types of vehicles, drones, weapons, whatever it might be. And if somebody sees something like that, isn't read into that project, thinks that it's an anomalous object and reports it to Arrow, you're obviously going to want to limit how far that information goes as well. So there's going to be things built into the wording of this legislation that protects actual, that's a genuine national security problem. If people are talking and communicating and sharing photographs and videos from sensitive areas of an actual black budget program, which is, a national security issue, you don't want that going everywhere, do you? So there's going to be bits in there that are relating to that as well.
I know Ashley's going to say something. I was just going to say on a Christmas theme, it just makes me think, well, tonight, thank God it's them instead of you.
Oh, very good.
Yeah, bring
I've been writing it.
Yeah,
I've been
Bob Geldof, right?
Yeah. I'm trying to do a UAP version of that song. I've got some great lines in it, but it's not finished yet.
Do they know it's UAP time? Yeah.
Yeah, report time. Exactly. That's what it's about. Yeah. There's an orb outside your window. All that.
Let my man Ash get in there. He busting at the seams.
Go for it, man.
I'm actually going to go a little bit off topic because I just wanted to add that we are so fortunate that in our field, in the UFO field, that we are actually able to discuss this as something that is happening. Because Greg and I were talking yesterday, we were talking about, can you imagine if there was like the US Army had somewhere that they could report seeing a ghost, or with DJ seeing a Bigfoot, and they could have these public hearings about ghost reports and Bigfoot reports. I mean, this whole sort of paranormal pseudoscience, whatever you want to call it, they are all intertwined, as we've been sort of finding out. But on UFO side of it, we've got all these public hearings. Government's taking it seriously, putting millions of pounds into it, going public with it all. We don't have that in other parts of the paranormal that we know of. Obviously, there's been some experiments in the past, but apart from that, we are so fortunate that we are able to talk about this, and we're having, like you say, these governments being open about it now. So just want to let's not forget that when we talk about all this as well.
We're blessed that we have a Christopher Mellon and a Lou Elizondo. If we didn't have those two, we would not be having this discussion right now, because there would not be legislation right now. I'm not trying to deify these guys or say that's like the Apostle Paul and Jesus. I'm not saying that, but their connections with the Hill made this something that they made this. He said, I brought Eric Davis before the Hill. So going back to Greg's point from earlier, and Ben Hansen, having this, tweet about something that, he should take down because it was proven that it wasn't accurate. Christopher saying, I endorse this person. That's really, he's staking his reputation on it. And because of that, because of those two guys, despite all the hate they've gotten on Twitter, which is absurd, we have gotten disclosure, and the Bigfoot community and the paranormal community does not have that person. They just don't. I mean, Ghost is going to be even harder than Bigfoot. There's a physical security issue within the national park system and the state park system that people need to take heed of, so that they know what you could be interacting with when you go there. And other than some local counties, they're not talking about it. So we're extremely fortunate to be in this position in the UFO community.
But fundamentally, if you think about it, I mean, I've dismissed the violinist for both of you. I heard you saying this, Greg, as well. It's intrinsic in the UAP topic because it's got a defence hook. Absolutely right. If there weren't people who were prepared who knew the system, who could prize it open, which nobody else has done, but it's got a defence hook, and that's why it's important. Really, it's not big enough, Bigfoot, because of the national park issue. It's not quite big enough to make it. And again, the paranormal, it's sort of, it's hard to know where that goes, even though it's important. It's not got an intrinsic. And that's what the difference is, isn't it? Apart from it happening. But I remember I listened to the show you did yesterday on that. And so, that's the difference, isn't it, really? It's intrinsic to the UAP, but it actually connects international policy. And that shows the importance of connecting it to defence, however much people didn't like it, I think.
Huge.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, it's one of them. It's a really exciting time to be following this topic. I mean, I think that particular aspect of it, I have conversations with people outside of the UFO community. I always try, and I'm sure we all do, you slip in a little like, oh, by the way, do you see that thing about UFOs? Just to see what people's reactions are, kind of thing. You don't want to unleash a big rant, because then they start looking at you weird and their eyes glaze over. But if you just if you just drop something casually into a conversation to see what the reaction is, I think one of the things that always really intrigues people is the concept of like crash retrievals has the government got something, the American government, have they got a saucer or whatever it might be. And it's really quite amazing to think that we're actually in a position where Congress is actually asking that same question and, really trying to get to the bottom of that. And that's happening right before our eyes. So it's going to be an interesting year, isn't it? If all the rumours about who's lining up to come forward are actually true. So, anyone got anything else to add on that? We'll wrap up in a minute, I think. All good. I just want to know before we go. I'm curious as to what everybody's festive beverage of choice is, and it can be a non-alcoholic beverage as well. Oh. I'm not condoning irresponsible drinking, so it can be a cup of tea or whatever you want. But yeah, go on then, DJ. What's your festive beverage, mate?
Well, obviously beer. Because I am from Montrose, New York, Hendrick Hudson High School. We drink beer. Also a little bit of vino right there. I love some of this.
Nice.
And I've got obviously the Yorkshire Gold that you guys took me to task for not too long ago. So
Yeah.
Excellent.
I thought when I was making
brew.
a cup of tea the other day, has DJ got Yorkshire tea? And I thought, I bet he can get it where he is anyway.
Yeah, I'm right.
I'm not going to send him any.
No, thank you, love. They have it at the commissary, believe it or not.
Funny thing is about Yorkshire tea is that I used to drink Yorkshire tea all the time, but I actually drink Earl Grey now. And there's a lad who I teach to play the drums who's been coming for lessons for probably about 7 or 8 years. And one year he bought me a box of Yorkshire Gold as a Christmas present. And I was like, oh, thanks very much, and was drinking it and stuff like that. The following year, I was actually drinking Earl Grey, but he still brought me a box of Yorkshire Gold. And in my cupboard now, I must have, 7 boxes of Yorkshire Gold unopened. So if anybody wants some Yorkshire Gold, next time, DJ, I'll give you a box, mate.
Yeah, brother. What? Yeah, I mean, I could be there in January, so yeah.
Woo!
Yeah, it's very kind. Just on the off chance that he's listening, thank you for the Yorkshire Gold. It was very nice of you, but unfortunately, they have gathered dust for quite some years now. So, what about you, Dave? What's your festive beverage, mate?
Oh, well, it's normally a Johnny Walker and Coke. Actually, it's my favourite drink. Quite like that. I like the old Johnny Walker Red Label. I'm not posh, but yeah, that's my favourite beverage of choice. I got some pliers for Christmas, funnily enough, as well. And we can maybe use them on Moultrie's fingernails as they try and get him out of whatever, because they'll be stuck in the door, won't they, as they're trying to get him out. But anyway, maybe, sorry, that's a bit. I'll shoe on that end.
Very, very good, mate. So, Ash, I'm guessing you're on the wicked, is it? Yeah, very wicked, as we mentioned earlier.
Definitely me, alcoholic drink of choice. Non-alcoholic, with it being that cold in the UK the last couple of weeks, a nice hot Vimto is a go-to as well.
You've been knocking a few of them back recently, Ash, I've noticed, on the programmes. There's been a lot of mention of those wickeds.
Yeah.
It's not just a one-off thing, mate.
I can't get with this.
The stress is getting to him.
I'm pre-WKD from my drinking years, so...
Same.
Yeah.
His hair looks great, though, man. Ash, I was going to say, man.
Thank you. It's mid style at the minute. I'm halfway through dyeing it, so it's...
Yeah, trying to get... I'm the same with the yellow.
Yeah.
Oh, very good, yes.
Trying to make it white. How does Vinny do it? We're going to have to ask him and maybe have like a hair dye podcast.
That's probably why he wears his hat so much, isn't it? He's probably got a bit of a dye job on the go, mid hat.
So how about you, Charlotte? What's the festive beverage for you?
Well, every year I call her my mother-in-law. I'm not married to the guy, but she buys us a Chambord, which is a very upmarket raspberry liqueur, isn't it? Which is quite nice to just drink a little bit. Yes, that exactly, the little finger out. Her phrase is decorum at all times, so she's very old school, old money. And because she's Scottish, she also gets us a bottle of Buckfast. So it's a heady mix in my head. Yeah.
Sounds quite refreshing, that raspberry liqueur. I don't think I've ever tried it. I might have to get on the case.
Just have it neat. Just a little bit. Yeah. It's lovely, just of an evening.
Well, why not? So what about you, Greg?
I don't really drink, so my drink of choice, as it is tonight, is tea. I got a big Christmas mug.
Very nice.
Nice, mate. Keep you warm in the cold weather. That's what it's all about.
Definitely. So, yeah.
I thought you were going to say raspberry liqueur then for a second. I was going to be freaked out.
Well, rum and Coke occasionally. If I have to go somewhere for a drink, that's rum and Coke is my thing.
Excellent. Right, well, oh yeah, my festive.
About you, Frank,
Joyce,
yeah.
by the way.
Yeah, Frank, what about you? You can't get out of this.
I thought I'd wriggled out of that one there for a second, but no, as I mentioned on the podcast a few times recently, it's actually whiskey. I always like a whiskey when it comes to the festive season. Usually single malt Scotch, just on its own, no ice or anything like that, proper stuff. But this year, I've invented my own cocktail. Because, again, similar thing, people were getting me bottles of bourbon, and I don't really drink bourbon that much anymore, so I was like, what am I going to do with this bourbon? Not a bad problem to have, is it? I've got like 4 or 5 litre bottles of bourbon in the house that I need to use. Like, well, never mind. So, I invented a cocktail. So it is about a third of a measure, like a shot measure thing for making cocktail, third of a measure of lime juice, a full measure of freshly squeezed orange juice, about a third of a measure of sugar syrup, and then 2 generous measures.
What's sugar syrup?
Just like sugar with
like
water.
Maple syrup.
No, just
like make it yourself.
Yeah, you can actually buy pre-made sugar syrup for cocktails, or you can just make it yourself. It's just 2 parts sugar, 1 part water. You put it in the microwave so it gets hot, and then just keep it in a bottle. It lasts forever. So here we go. It's like Frank's cocktail class, isn't it?
Right, I'm going to go
Is
to
it
the
like a
gun room
hot
in a minute.
toddy? Like hot?
Frank,
I'm
I'm going to recommend agave for the lower glycemic index. That's all I've got to say. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you can use agave syrup. I think you can actually use maple syrup, but obviously it's got a strong mapley sort of taste. But yeah, the actual syrup that you make, it's just simple syrup, and it's 2 parts. It varies different ratios, but I do 2 parts sugar to 1 part water. You make it hot so that it dissolves, so otherwise it's grainy. But then you let it cool down, and then use it when it's actually cold. So otherwise you'd end up like a warm cocktail or whatever. So yeah. It's a third lime, third syrup, a full measure of fresh orange juice, and then 2 big shots of bourbon. Stick it in a shaker with some ice. I tell you what, it's actually really nice, and I had way too many from yesterday. I don't know, I've not named it.
UFO Thinker.
No.
That's not a great name for a cocktail, though, is it? Oh, the Thinker. There we go.
Black Triangle.
Yes.
Yeah,
the
the
Mycroft Holmes of UFO Twitter here. I love it, man. I could see him at the social club.
Yeah, the Diogenes Club, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
The Thinker sounds a bit stuffy, though, doesn't it? It's not a very fun name for a cocktail.
What about the Drinker, then?
The Triangle is good. I like the Drinker.
Yeah.
You might see one
Black
after that.
Triangle.
All right,
Yeah. It sounds a bit rude as well, though.
Well, I hadn't even thought of that.
Right, well, on that note,
We'll draw a veil over that.
I think we best do. Right, so thanks very much, everyone. It's been an absolute pleasure. I'll stick everybody's Twitter things in the
Christmas,
description.
Happy New Year. It's been great to see you.
Thanks, Frank. You
The newest cabbie, baby, Frank Jones.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, follow that cab.
All right, everybody. Thanks very much. I'll catch you next time.
See you later.
See ya.
Yeah.
UFO Roundtable. The UFO Thinker and Pursuit of the Paranormal podcasts.